Welcome to my channel. Try to hear the latest story.
When I was 14, my parents told me to grow up and stop being a burden, then left me at a truck stop in the desert. I never spoke to them again until my sister's wedding invite arrived 17 years later. Hey Reddit, so this is going to be rough, but I need to get it out there. My parents abandoned me at a truck stop in the middle of nowhere when I was 14 years old. Told me I was a burden and drove off. I slept in a drainage ditch that night. Fast forward 17 years, and I just got a wedding invitation from my sister with a note from my parents like nothing ever happened. Here's what went down. I'm Owen, 31 years old now. The envelope sat on my kitchen counter for 3 days before I opened it. Cream-colored expensive paper, my sister Madison's name printed in elegant script across the return address. I knew what it was before I touched it. 17 years since I last saw my parents, Robert and Linda Mitchell. 17 years since they drove away from that truck stop outside Henderson, Nevada, leaving me standing next to a grimy bathroom with nothing but a backpack and 23 bucks in my pocket. But let me back up and give you the full picture of how messed up my family was from the beginning. Growing up in Fresno, we looked like the perfect family from the outside. Big house in a gated community, 2 successful parents, 2 kids. My dad Robert ran a boutique architecture firm, specializing in medical buildings and corporate offices. My mom Linda was a partner at one of the biggest law firms in the Central Valley, specializing in corporate litigation. They made good money, drove nice cars, belonged to the country club. On paper, we had everything. Behind closed doors? Different story entirely. I was always the problem child. Madison was 2 years older, straight A's from kindergarten on, captain of the volleyball team, student body president, debate team champion. Basically the daughter who never caused issues. She was organized, focused, naturally gifted at everything academic. Teachers loved her. My parents' friends would always comment on how impressive she was, how she was going places. Then there was me. I struggled with school from day one. Not because I was stupid. My test scores showed I was actually pretty smart, but because I had undiagnosed ADHD that nobody bothered to investigate. I couldn't sit still during lessons. I'd start homework assignments and forget what I was doing halfway through. I'd lose papers between my backpack and my desk. Simple stuff that came easy to everyone else felt like climbing a mountain for me. My dad said I was lazy. My mom said I just needed to apply myself. When I was in 3rd grade and brought home my first D, my mom sat me down and gave me this speech about how disappointed she was. Madison never brings home grades like this, she said. What's wrong with you? I didn't know what was wrong with me. I just knew that no matter how hard I tried, I couldn't keep up. By middle school, the comparison to Madison was constant. She'd come home with straight A's and awards, and my parents would celebrate with her favorite dinner and praise. I'd come home with B's and C's, which honestly took me twice as much effort as Madison's A's took her, and I'd get lectures about not living up to my potential. Your sister manages to excel at everything, my dad would say during these talks. She's taking advanced classes, she's in 3 extracurricular activities, and she still gets perfect grades. You're taking regular classes and can barely pass. It's embarrassing. That word, embarrassing, came up a lot. I was an embarrassment to them, a stain on their perfect family portrait. When I asked for help with homework, my father would sigh like I'd asked him to move a mountain. He'd glance at my assignment, say something like, "This is basic stuff, Owen. Figure it out yourself," and go back to his architectural plans. You can't expect everyone to hold your hand through life. Madison figured it out on her own. So can you. My mom was worse in some ways. She'd start to help, then get frustrated when I didn't understand her explanations. I've explained this 3 times now. Are you even listening? Madison got this concept immediately when she was your age. I don't understand why you're being so difficult. I tried, man. I really did. But the harder I tried, the worse things got. By 14, I was pulling C's and D's despite spending hours on homework every night. I'd forget to turn in assignments even when I'd completed them. I'd lose track of time and show up late to class. My parents' disappointment hung over our house like smoke, thick and choking. The worst part was how they talked about me to other people, like I wasn't even there. At family gatherings, they'd brag about Madison to anyone who'd listen. She just got accepted to this prestigious summer program at Stanford. We're so proud. Then someone would ask about me, and my parents would get this tight-lipped look. Owen's finding his way. He's been struggling a bit with school, but we're working on it. Translation: our son is a disappointment we don't know what to do with. Madison wasn't mean about it, at least not directly, but she was so used to being the golden child that she didn't even notice how differently we were treated. She'd complain about getting an A- like it was the end of the world, and my parents would comfort her and help her strategize how to do better. I'd celebrate getting a B on a test I'd studied for all week, and they'd ask why it wasn't an A. Different standards, different worlds, same family. The summer before ninth grade, things escalated to a breaking point. My mom landed this huge promotion at her law firm. Made partner, big deal, fancy celebration dinner at the most expensive restaurant in town. My dad's architecture firm won some prestigious contract to design a massive medical complex downtown, a multi-million-dollar project that would take 3 years. Madison got accepted into this competitive summer program at Stanford for high school students. Only 30 kids from across the country got in. The whole family was winning. Everyone was succeeding, moving up, achieving their dreams. And me? I failed algebra, had to retake it in summer school while everyone else was celebrating their victories. The report card came in mid-June. I knew it was bad before I opened it, but seeing that F in black and white made my stomach drop. I'd worked so hard in that class, stayed after school for help, spent hours trying to understand polynomials and quadratic equations. None of it stuck. My brain just couldn't process the abstract concepts the way it needed to. I waited until dinner to tell them. Figured maybe if they were all together, the blow would be softened. I was wrong. "Do you have any idea how embarrassing this is?" my mother asked, her voice sharp as glass. She'd just gotten home from work, still in her expensive suit, her partner nameplate probably still warm from being mounted on her new office door. "Madison's professors at Stanford are asking about our family. They want to know about her background, her home life. What am I supposed to say? That our youngest can't even pass high school math? He's not even trying," my dad added, not looking at me. He was cutting his steak with more force than necessary. "He's given up. I see it every day. He comes home from school and just gives up." "I haven't given up," I said quietly. "I studied every night. I went to tutoring. I don't understand why it's not working." "Because you're not applying yourself," my mom snapped. "Madison takes twice as many classes as you, participates in extracurricular activities, volunteers, and still maintains a 4.0. You have half her course load and you can't even pass basic math. It's a choice, Owen. You're choosing to fail." That hurt worse than anything. The idea that I was deliberately failing, that I wanted this, that I enjoyed disappointing them. I wanted to scream that I was trying harder than Madison ever had to, that what came naturally to her required every ounce of effort I had. But I knew they wouldn't believe me. My dad set down his fork. "Your mother and I have been talking. This pattern can't continue. You're going to be in high school in the fall. High school grades matter for college. We're not going to let you throw away your future because you can't be bothered to do the work." "I am doing the work." "Clearly not enough," he interrupted. "Madison's already getting recruitment letters from universities. You know what you're getting? Letters about summer school schedules. It's pathetic." Madison sat there silently through all of this, pushing food around her plate. She looked uncomfortable but didn't say anything in my defense. Never did. She'd learned early that staying out of it was the safest play. The rest of that summer was a nightmare. While Madison prepared for Stanford, buying new clothes and special notebooks and getting excited about meeting brilliant students from around the country, I sat in a hot classroom 5 days a week with other kids who'd failed their classes. The teacher was kind but overworked, teaching 3 different subjects to kids who didn't want to be there. I passed with a C-. It took every ounce of effort I had, but I passed. My parents didn't congratulate me. They didn't even acknowledge it. The same week I finished summer school, Madison came home from Stanford with stories of autonomous robots she'd built, professors who'd praised her work, students from MIT and Caltech who'd exchanged contact info with her for future projects. At dinner that night, my dad asked her detailed questions about her program, the curriculum, the other students, the facilities. My mom talked about how this would look amazing on college applications. They were already planning her future, which Ivy League schools she'd apply to, what summer internships she should pursue next year. Nobody asked about summer school. Nobody mentioned the C- I'd fought so hard for. That's when I really understood. I wasn't part of the family vision. I was an obstacle to it. August 19th. That's the date I'll never forget. We were driving back from visiting my grandmother in Los Angeles. She lived in a retirement community in Pasadena, and we made the trip twice a year. This time, it had been particularly awkward because my grandmother kept asking me about school, and my parents kept deflecting with vague answers about how I was working on improving. Madison sat in the front seat for most of the drive back, talking about her summer program at Stanford. Some robotics thing where she'd built an autonomous vehicle that won their competition. She'd gotten a certificate signed by the program director and a letter of recommendation for college applications. My parents were already planning how to leverage this achievement. I was in the back, staring out the window, exhausted from 2 hours of listening to how accomplished my sister was. The landscape shifted from LA's sprawl to the Mojave Desert. Empty, brown, endless. Heat shimmered off the pavement even though the sun was starting to drop toward the horizon. Somewhere past Barstow, heading toward Vegas on I-15, my dad suddenly said he needed to stop. "Need coffee and to stretch my legs," he announced. "We'll stop at that truck stop coming up." It was one of those massive places right off the interstate. Gas pumps in multiple rows. A Denny's attached to the main building. A convenience store. Trucker showers. Even a small chapel for long-haul drivers. Semis lined up in the back lot like sleeping elephants. Desert stretched out in every direction, brown and hostile under the late afternoon sun. My dad pulled up to a pump, but didn't start filling the tank. Just turned off the engine and sat there for a moment. My mom was unusually quiet, staring straight ahead. Madison was texting someone, probably her boyfriend, not paying attention to the weird tension in the car. "Everyone out," my dad said. "We're taking a break." My mom went straight to the bathroom. Madison stayed near the car, leaning against the passenger door with her phone. I wandered toward the main building, thinking maybe I'd grab a snack or use the bathroom myself. That's when my dad called me back. "Owen, come here." His voice had that flat quality it got when he was about to say something he'd already decided. I walked back to the car, confused. He was standing by the open trunk. My backpack, the one I'd brought on the trip with just my clothes, a book, some snacks, was sitting on the edge of the trunk bed. "Your mother and I have been talking," he started. His face was completely blank, like he was discussing a business transaction. "You're 14 years old now. You're old enough to understand consequences. Old enough to start taking responsibility for yourself." My stomach twisted into a knot. "What do you mean?" "We're tired, Owen." He said my name like it tasted bad in his mouth. "We're tired of the drama, the poor grades, the constant neediness. We've tried everything. Tutors, study groups, accommodations at school, incentives, punishments. Nothing works because you don't want it to work." "That's not true." "Don't interrupt me." His voice was cold, the way he probably talked to contractors who'd messed up his projects. "You need to grow up and stop being such a burden on this family. We have Madison's future to focus on. She has real potential, real opportunities, and we can't keep wasting our time and energy on someone who refuses to help themselves." My mother appeared behind him then. I'd been so focused on my dad that I hadn't noticed her coming back from the bathroom. Her face was hard, makeup perfect, hair still styled even after hours in the car. She looked at me the way you'd look at a stain on expensive furniture, with mild disgust and annoyance. "We've given you every opportunity," she said. "Private tutors that cost us hundreds of dollars. A private educational consultant who designed a study plan specifically for you. Accommodations at school that Madison never needed. But you refuse to meet us halfway. You refuse to put in even basic effort. I don't understand what you're saying." My voice cracked. My hands were shaking. Some part of me knew what was coming, but my brain refused to accept it. "You're old enough to figure things out on your own," my dad said. He picked up my backpack and held it out to me like he was handing back a borrowed tool. "There's some money in the front pocket. I suggest you use it wisely. Make better choices than you've been making." I didn't take the backpack. Just stood there, frozen, staring at him. This couldn't be real. This had to be some kind of scare tactic, a lesson they were teaching me. Parents didn't just abandon their kids at truck stops in the middle of nowhere. "Dad, what are you doing?" "This is your wake-up call," my mom interrupted. Her voice clipped and businesslike. "Maybe when you realize how good you had it, you'll appreciate what you've thrown away. Maybe you'll finally grow up and take responsibility for your own failures instead of expecting us to fix everything for you." "I'm not throwing anything away," I said, my voice rising. I'm trying so hard." "No, you're not," my dad said firmly. He set the backpack on the ground between us. "If you were trying, you'd be succeeding. Madison tries, and look at her accomplishments. You make excuses and expect us to keep carrying you. We're done carrying you." They turned and walked back toward the car. Just like that. No hesitation, no second thoughts. My mom got in the passenger seat and immediately pulled down the visor mirror, checking her makeup like this was completely normal. Like she hadn't just told her 14-year-old son she was abandoning him in the desert. I stood there, frozen, certain this was some cruel joke. Any second now they'd turn around. They'd laugh, that harsh, mocking laugh my dad used when he thought someone was being ridiculous, and tell me to get back in the car. They'd say they were teaching me a lesson about taking things for granted. The engine started. Madison's face appeared in the rear window. She looked back at me, and for a second our eyes met. Her face was pale, eyes wide. She looked scared. She mouthed something I couldn't make out. Maybe I'm sorry, maybe I don't know. But she didn't move, didn't open the door, didn't scream at our parents to stop. She just turned around slowly and faced forward. The car backed out of the parking space. My dad turned the wheel, put it in drive, and headed for the exit. I stood there watching them drive away, my backpack still on the ground at my feet, the late afternoon sun beating down on my head. A semi-truck pulled into the pump next to where we'd been parked, the air brakes hissing, and I flinched like I'd been slapped. They were really gone. I stood in that parking lot for 20 minutes, maybe longer. The sun was setting, painting the desert sky in violent shades of orange and purple. Other cars came and went. People looked at me, a teenage kid standing alone with a backpack, no parents in sight, but nobody said anything. Maybe they thought I was waiting for someone. Maybe they just didn't want to get involved. I was 80 miles from home in the middle of nowhere. The truck stop sat like an island in an ocean of empty desert. I had no phone. My parents had taken it 2 weeks earlier as punishment for failing a quiz. No way to call anyone. No plan for what came next. Finally, my legs started working again. I picked up the backpack and walked toward the main building, my mind blank, moving on autopilot. I walked to the main building and found a payphone near the bathrooms. The ancient kind with metal cords and that sticky residue on the handset. First quarter I fed, it didn't connect. The second quarter got me a dial tone. My hands were shaking so bad I could barely push the buttons. I called our house, let it ring, and ring, and ring. Nobody answered. Tried again. Nothing. I stood there for a minute, the dial tone humming in my ear, trying to figure out what to do next. I didn't have any other numbers memorized. All my contacts had been in my phone. My grandmother didn't have a cell, just a landline at the retirement community, and I didn't know that number by heart. Tried our house 3 more times over the next hour. Each time, same result. Just ringing into the void. They were home by now, they had to be, but they weren't answering. Maybe they'd unplugged the phone. Maybe they were sitting there listening to it ring, waiting to see how long I'd keep trying. By 10 p.m., the truck stop had mostly emptied out. A few semis were parked in the back lot with their running lights on, drivers probably sleeping in their cabs. The Denny's was closing up. The guy working the register at the convenience store kept giving me suspicious looks through the window. A security guard, older guy, maybe 60, with a gut that hung over his belt, walked up to me while I was sitting on a bench outside the main entrance. "You waiting for someone, kid?" "Yeah," I lied. "My parents. They went to grab something and told me to wait here." He looked around the mostly empty parking lot. "When did they leave?" "A while ago. They'll be back soon." He didn't look convinced. "Well, I can't let you stay inside overnight once we lock up. Property rules. If they're not back in the next hour, you'll need to find somewhere else to wait." "Okay," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. He walked away, and I realized I was about to have nowhere to go. I walked around the perimeter of the truck stop, looking for anywhere I could sleep that wouldn't be immediately visible. Found a drainage ditch behind the truck parking area. A concrete channel maybe 4 feet wide and 3 feet deep, where runoff from the parking lot would flow during rain. It was dry now, just oil-stained concrete and desert dust. I climbed down into it and sat with my back against the sloped wall. It was cooler down here, at least. The concrete held the night chill, and the walls blocked some of the wind that had picked up as the temperature dropped. I curled up in the ditch with my backpack as a pillow. The ground was hard and smelled like diesel and something chemical I couldn't identify. I could hear the highway traffic from Interstate 15, a constant low roar that never quite stopped. Sometimes a semi would pull into the lot, air brakes hissing, engine rumbling, and I'd tense up, worried someone would see me. I didn't sleep. Couldn't. I was terrified someone would find me and call the police. Terrified no one would find me, and I'd just be stuck here forever. I cried until my throat was raw and my eyes burned, then lay there staring at the stars, trying to understand what I'd done that was so terrible I deserved this. The desert night was cold in a way I wasn't prepared for. My sweatshirt wasn't warm enough. I curled into a tight ball, arms wrapped around myself, shivering. Every noise made me jump. Scurrying animals, wind rattling loose trash, the occasional car door slamming. At some point, exhaustion must have won because I drifted into a half-sleep. Not quite unconscious, but not fully aware either. Had dreams about being in the car, Madison turning around to look at me, but her face kept changing. Sometimes scared, sometimes blank, sometimes accusatory like this was my fault. When the sun came up, light creeping into the ditch and warming the concrete, I felt like I'd been run over. Everything hurt. My back from the hard ground, my head from crying and dehydration, my chest from the weight of what had happened. I climbed out of the ditch and went to the bathroom in the main building, washed my face with hand soap that smelled like industrial chemicals. In the mirror, I looked like hell. Red eyes, dirt on my face, hair sticking up in all directions. A woman coming out of the ladies' room gave me a concerned look, but didn't say anything. I counted the money in my backpack. $23 in cash. That was it. My entire net worth. Bought a granola bar and a bottle of water from the vending machines, leaving me with $19. Sat on the curb near the gas pumps, eating slowly, trying to make the food last, trying to figure out what came next. That's when I met Patricia. She came out of an RV parked at the edge of the lot. A big motorhome with Oregon plates, the kind retired couples drove across the country. She was maybe 50 years old, with kind eyes and gray hair pulled into a ponytail. Wearing jeans and a flannel shirt, she looked like someone's grandmother. She saw me sitting on the curb, probably looking like hell, and walked over with a coffee cup in her hand. "You okay, sweetheart?" I looked up at her. "Yeah, I'm fine." She sat down on the curb next to me, knees cracking as she did. "I saw you here last night. Saw you this morning. Still in the same clothes. Parents around?" Something about the way she asked, not suspicious or accusatory, just genuinely concerned, broke whatever resolve I had left. The words poured out in a messy, desperate rush. I told her everything. About the failing grades, the constant disappointment, the truck stop abandonment, sleeping in the ditch, my parents not answering the phone. Patricia listened without interrupting. Her expression grew darker with each sentence I spoke. When I finally ran out of words, she was quiet for a moment, just looking at me with something that looked like anger, but not at me. "Where do you live, sweetheart?" "Fresno," I said. "But I can't go home. They don't want me there." "What are your parents' names?" I told her. "Robert and Linda Mitchell." Gave her our home phone number, the one I'd been calling that kept ringing unanswered. Patricia's jaw tightened. "Those people aren't parents. They're criminals. What they did is called child abandonment, and it's illegal. Very illegal. I don't want to get them in trouble," I said, which was stupid considering what they'd done to me. "Honey, they're already in trouble. They just don't know it yet." She stood up, knees cracking again. "Come on, we're going to the police." I gave the officers my parents' information, explained what happened. They called my house. My mother answered. I sat in a plastic chair at the station while the officer talked to her on the phone in another room. When he came back, his face was grim. "Your mother says you ran away from the truck stop after an argument. She says they looked for you for an hour before having to leave for an important business meeting." "That's not true," I said, my voice shaking. "They left me there on purpose. My dad gave me my backpack and said I needed to grow up. They just drove away." The officer looked uncomfortable. "It's your word against theirs. And they're saying they want you to come home. They're very concerned." "I'm not going back. You're a minor. You don't have a choice." Patricia stepped in then. "I'm a licensed foster care provider in Oregon. I can take temporary custody while this gets sorted out through proper channels." The officer looked relieved to have an option that didn't involve immediate family conflict. "We'll need to contact Child Protective Services and start the paperwork." What followed was 3 weeks of bureaucracy. CPS opened an investigation. My parents were interviewed multiple times. They stuck to their story. I'd run away. They'd searched for me. They were devastated by my disappearance. Madison was interviewed too. She told them she saw me standing by the car when they drove away. But my parents coached her to say she'd been asleep and didn't see anything. The investigation went nowhere. No proof either way. Just my word against theirs. But here's the thing. Patricia didn't give up. She petitioned for emergency foster placement, arguing that sending me back to people who'd admitted, in their version, to leaving a 14-year-old at a truck stop was dangerous. The judge agreed to temporary placement while things got sorted out. My parents didn't fight it. They showed up to one hearing, sat stone-faced while their lawyer argued they'd been misunderstood, then never came back. They signed paperwork relinquishing custody without a fight. Just like that, I was gone, and they were free to focus on Madison's success without the burden of their failure son. I moved to Oregon with Patricia. She lived in a small town called Ashland, ran a licensed foster home for kids who needed a safe place. I was her only placement at the time. She enrolled me in the local high school, got me tested for ADHD, surprise, I had it, along with a processing disorder, and started me on medication and accommodations that actually helped. For the first time in my life, school became manageable. Not easy, I still had to work hard, but manageable. I pulled B's and C's instead of D's and F's. I joined the cross-country team because running cleared my head. I made friends who didn't know anything about my past except that I was Patricia's foster kid. I graduated high school with a 3.2 GPA, got accepted to Oregon State. Patricia helped me fill out financial aid forms, drove me to campus for orientation, cried when I moved into my dorm. She was at every milestone my real parents should have been at but weren't. I studied social work. Figured if someone like Patricia could save my life, maybe I could do the same for other kids. Got my bachelor's, then my master's. Started working for Child Protective Services, doing investigations and advocacy work. Met my wife, Kelsey, during grad school. She was studying psychology, and we bonded over shared interest in helping kids who'd been failed by the system. We got married 3 years ago. Small ceremony, just close friends, and Patricia. No family drama because I didn't have family beyond Patricia anymore. I hadn't spoken to my parents in 17 years. Hadn't tried to contact them. Hadn't responded to the few attempts they'd made. A birthday card when I turned 18, which I threw away. A Facebook friend request from my mom that I ignored. A Christmas card 5 years ago that went straight into the trash. As far as I was concerned, they'd made their choice when they drove away from that truck stop. I made mine by building a life without them. Then 3 weeks ago, the wedding invitation arrived. I stared at it for days. Madison was getting married. Part of me wanted to throw it away like everything else from that family. But another part of me was curious. 17 years is a long time. Had she turned out like them? Did she even remember what happened? Did she care? The invitation included a handwritten note on separate paper. Madison's handwriting, not my parents'. Owen, I don't know if you'll even open this, but I needed to try. I've thought about that day every single day for 17 years. I was too scared to do anything. I regret it more than you'll ever know. If you're willing, I'd really like you to be at my wedding. No pressure, no expectations, just an invitation from your sister who misses you. Madison. Kelsey found me sitting at the kitchen table that night, staring at the note. What's wrong? She asked. I handed her the invitation. She read it, then looked at me. What do you want to do? I don't know, I admitted. Part of me wants to ignore it. They don't get to just pop back into my life like nothing happened. But Madison, she was just a kid too. 16 years old when it happened. What was she supposed to do? That's up to you to decide, Kelsey said. But if you do go, I'm coming with you. Not letting you walk back into that situation alone. I called Patricia that night, told her about the invitation. She listened quietly, then asked one question. What do you need from this, kiddo? If you go, what are you hoping to get? I thought about it. Closure, I guess. I want to see Madison as an adult, see if she turned into them, or if she's different. And if my parents are there, I want them to see what I became despite them. Then go, Patricia said. But go for yourself, not for them. 2 weeks later, Kelsey and I flew to Fresno for the wedding. I'd RSVP'd yes, but hadn't reached out to Madison directly. Figured I'd see how things went. The rehearsal dinner was at this upscale vineyard in the foothills. We arrived late on purpose, didn't want to deal with the pre-dinner awkwardness. Walked into a private dining room with maybe 40 people. Wedding party, close family, friends. Madison saw me immediately. She was standing near the bar with her fiancé, a tall guy with an easy smile. Her face went pale, then flushed. She excused herself and walked straight over to me. Owen, she said, her voice barely above a whisper. You came. I hoped, but I didn't think you would. Got your note, I said. She looked older, obviously. 20 years had passed, but she still had the same eyes, same nervous habit of tucking hair behind her ear when she was anxious. Can we talk? She asked. Somewhere private? We ended up on the vineyard's patio, away from the noise. Kelsey gave my hand a squeeze and went to grab drinks, giving us space. I'm so sorry, Madison started, tears already forming. I know that's not enough. I know it doesn't fix anything. But I need you to know that I think about that day all the time. I was terrified. They told me if I said anything to the police, they'd make my life hell. I was 16 and stupid and scared, and I chose wrong. I chose them over you, and I've regretted it every single day since. I didn't say anything at first. Just let her talk. I didn't realize how messed up it was until I got to college, she continued. I started talking to people, hearing about their families, and I realized ours wasn't normal. What they did to you wasn't normal. I tried to bring it up with them a few times, and they shut me down completely. Said you'd made your choices and they'd made theirs. Where are they now? I asked. They're not coming to the wedding, Madison said, wiping her eyes. I didn't invite them. Haven't spoken to them in 3 years. They wanted me to marry this guy from Dad's firm, some architect's son they'd been pushing me toward. When I told them I was dating Brandon instead, they lost it. Said I was throwing away my future. When I got engaged anyway, They gave me an ultimatum. Break up with him or they'd cut me off. She laughed bitterly. I chose him. And you know what? They actually cut me off. Disowned me for not following their plan. That's when I realized they didn't love us. They loved control. We were props in their perfect life performance. And the second we stopped playing our roles, we were disposable. Yeah, I said quietly. I figured that out 17 years ago. I'm so sorry I didn't figure it out sooner, Madison said. I'm sorry I didn't stand up for you. I'm sorry I let them turn me into someone who could watch her brother get abandoned and do nothing. We talked for almost an hour. She told me about therapy, about confronting the guilt she'd carried, about cutting ties with our parents when she realized they'd never change. I told her about Patricia, about college, about becoming a social worker specifically to help kids like I'd been. You turned out amazing, she said, despite everything they did to you. And I'm so proud to be your sister, even if I don't deserve to be. You were a kid too, I said. We both were. They were the adults. They're the ones who failed. Before we went back inside, Madison asked, would you be willing to give a speech tomorrow? At the wedding. I know that's a lot to ask, but I want people to know my real family. Not the version Mom and Dad sold everyone for years. I thought about it. About walking into a room full of people who probably knew my parents' version of the story. That I'd run away, gotten into trouble, wanted nothing to do with the family. About setting the record straight. Yeah, I said. I can do that. The wedding the next day was beautiful. Outdoor ceremony in the vineyard gardens, string lights everywhere, Madison looking genuinely happy in a way I'd never seen when we were kids. Patricia flew in that morning, met Madison properly, cried happy tears. She sat next to me during the ceremony. My parents never showed. I'd asked Madison if they knew I'd be there, and she said she'd told them. Apparently, my mother had called and said they weren't comfortable with me attending, but knew Madison wouldn't change her mind. So they chose not to come, rather than face me. During the reception, when it was time for speeches, I stood up. The room quieted. I could see some of my parents' old friends scattered throughout, people who'd known me as the troubled younger son who'd run away as a teenager. Most of you don't know me, I started. I'm Madison's brother, Owen. We haven't seen each other in 17 years because when I was 14 years old, our parents drove me to a truck stop in the desert and left me there. Told me I was a burden and drove away. I slept in a ditch that night. You could hear a pin drop. I was saved by a woman named Patricia. I gestured to where she sat, tears already streaming down her face, who found me the next morning and refused to leave me behind. She became my foster mother, helped me finish school, helped me become the person I am today. She showed me what real love looks like, the kind that doesn't come with conditions or disappear when things get hard. I looked at Madison, who was crying openly now, her fiancé's arm around her. I'm here today because Madison had the courage to reach out after all these years. Because she did the work to break free from the same toxic patterns we both grew up in. Because she chose love over control, authenticity over appearances. And that's what family should be. Choosing each other, showing up, doing the hard work. I talked about building the family you need when the family you're born into fails you. About Patricia, about Kelsey, about the people who'd proved through actions that I mattered. I didn't mention my parents by name again, but I told enough of the story that anyone paying attention could fill in the blanks. When I finished, the applause was thunderous. People stood. Several older guests who'd clearly known my parents looked shocked, whispering to each other. Patricia was sobbing. Madison crossed the room and hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being strong enough to tell the truth. An older woman approached me afterward, one of my mother's longtime friends from her law firm. Robert and Linda aren't here, she said carefully. Did something happen? They weren't feeling well, I said neutrally. She studied my face. You're Owen, the younger child. They said you ran away years ago, got mixed up with drugs, wanted nothing to do with the family. That's not what happened. I gathered that from your speech, she said quietly. I'm glad you're here. I'm glad Madison had someone who loved her the right way. Several other guests approached throughout the evening. Some had heard whispers over the years, inconsistencies in my parents' stories. Others were simply moved by the speech and wanted to express support. Each conversation felt like another brick being removed from the wall of lies my parents had built. Brandon's mother, Helen, pulled me aside before dessert. Madison told me what your parents really did, she said quietly. I just want you to know that you're family now. Brandon's family, which makes you my family. If you ever need anything, you call me. The kindness from these strangers, people who had no obligation to me, was overwhelming. I'd spent so long believing something was fundamentally wrong with me that I was unlovable. But here were dozens of people moved by my story, offering support without conditions. Later that night, back at the hotel, Kelsey helped me process everything. "You gave them an out," she said. "They could have stayed away quietly, but instead they're probably spinning this to anyone who will listen." "Let them," I said. "The people who matter know the truth now. Madison knows. Patricia knows. Everyone at that dinner knows. Their reputation is damaged, whether they realize it yet or not. Do you think they'll try to contact Madison? Probably. They'll try to control the narrative, make themselves the victims. But Madison's ready for it. She's been ready for years." 3 days later, Madison called me. "They're furious," she said. "Mom's been calling nonstop, saying you blackmailed them, that you're trying to destroy the family." "What did you tell her?" "I told her the only person who destroyed this family was her." Then I blocked both their numbers. Brandon and I are moving to Seattle next month for his job. Fresh start, away from them. "Good. Owen, will you visit us once we're settled?" "Yeah," I said. "I'd like that. We talk every week now." She's met Patricia several times, calls her Aunt Patricia like I do. She's working through her own guilt about what happened. She told me she wishes she'd been brave enough to leave with me that day, but she'd been too scared. I understand that fear. Leaving is hard. Surviving after leaving is harder. As for my parents, I never heard from them directly. But I heard through Madison that they're spinning a story to their friends about me being mentally unstable, about having to make the difficult choice to distance themselves for their own well-being. Some people believe them, some don't. If you enjoyed this video, please hit that subscribe button. It really helps the channel and help us bring you more and better stories. Thanks.